Okay, today I'd like to go through a little tutorial about modeling in 3ds Max, and I'd like to show you a couple of different techniques on how you can go about doing models in 3ds Max. I've chosen this example. I think most people would recognize it. It's kind of a classic IKEA chair. In one file here that you should have accessible to you called chair start, I've placed images of the front and side of the chair. So if you switch rapidly to let's say the left hand view, you'll see the chair in that view, and if you switch to the front, then the front view. So I'm going to start here in the left-hand view and remove the grid. And what I'm going to start doing is actually creating a simple box. And I'm going to start by creating this seat cushion here. And with this simple box, I just kind of lay it out roughly. Then I'm going to rotate it into kind of a proper angle, so I can line it up on the top and bottom of the seat. I can see pretty clearly that this is a little too thick, and my pivot point is in the middle, so I will try to center that. It's always good to switch to the Modify tab here, and we'll change, in this case, it's the length. So I'll adjust that until this looks a little bit more reasonable, and then move that maybe into position a little bit better. Kind of tweak both things at the same time. Okay, I need to add perhaps a little bit more geometry here. So what I'm going to do is go to Default Shading and change the mode to Edged Faces. And what I'll do here is I'll increase the number of width segments. Okay. And I can do this as many as I want, but I don't want to do too much, because the more I add, the more surfaces I get, so the more complex the geometry gets. So I'm going to now also switch to the front view, and I can see that things are a little too long here, but now I'd like to switch the number of height segments. So I'll switch that, and again I don't see this by default in the view, so let's go back here and check, and in fact Edged Faces isn't on. So while I'm here, I'm going to move this over to one side, so I'm picking up the side of the frame, and also adjust the height. So I'm also picking up the other side, and might want to zoom in a little bit so that we can see that more clearly. So the next thing I'll do is I will go to a three-dimensional view where I see the entire start of this object, and what I'm going to do is I'd like to extrude these faces here along the front and along the back, so that we can get better representation of the front and back of the cushion seat. So in order to do that, I'm going to apply something called an Edit Poly modifier. So I'll click here where it says Edit Poly, and I'll have to open this up first, and I'll choose Polygon. Use the Control key and select these three polygons. I'll go to the left view now, because it'll make it a little bit easier for me to see what I'm doing. And in this section here, I'll look for here in Edit Polygons, I'll look here for Extrude. And I can do this either by just clicking on this button, but what's much more handy is to click on this little settings button, and you get a little menu which appears, and you can start changing things here. Okay, so here I'm dragging this out, and I get to a point that I like, and I can either click OK and exit, or I can say kind of OK and continue. So when I click OK and continue, it just repeats this several times, and I'm going to actually do that until I get sufficient amount of geometry. Now before I go on, I'm actually going to go to the back side here. So actually I need to now accept this. But I'm going to choose my polygons, and I can actually choose this with a window instead of, you know, going to an isometric view like that. Okay. So choosing it with a window is a little bit easier, and I'm going to just repeat this extrusion, and you can see it remembers the length that I had used before. Okay, so I'll add perhaps a little bit too much geometry there, but that's okay. I'll be able to adjust this later. So click OK. Now, in order to kind of form fit this to my sketch, what I'll do here is I'll go into Vertex Mode and start moving these vertices like that. Select, go up to Select and Move, and move things down or wherever. Now sometimes it's a little hard to see what you're doing, so what I'll do here before I go on is I'll right click. I'm going to go to the object properties. In this section here, display properties, I'll turn off by layer, enable this mode here, see through. Click OK. So that allows me now to see through this object, and I can now move my vertices so I get something more resembling my curve. Now you can do this to a very fine degree, but what we're trying to do here is just get something that looks reasonable, okay, without adding a lot of complexity to the geometry. Okay, so I'll just finish this off. Actually, along the bottom here, I see this is maybe not in a great place, so I'm going to take some of those and move them down, and again finish off doing the adjustments of the back. All right, so we're almost done here, and the final thing I'd like to do is I'd like to add a little bit of a rounded edge on the sides of the cushions. So if I go, as soon as I'm done here, If I go back to the front view, and we'll need to get out of the Edit Poly mode, go back to the front view. All right. And you might see here a little bit that there is a bit of a curve here to this front cushion. Okay, and actually you can see them pretty clear here too. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to a modifier called Poly Select and choose Edge. So this modifier, rather than editing, it just allows you to select things. And I'll hold my Control key down with Edge selected, and I will select the edges on both sides of this seat cushion. Maybe to see this more clearly, we'll go to a 3D view. Okay, and what we'll do is we're going to now add a chamfer modifier. So we'll go to chamfer. Okay, we'll select here the amount and we'll change it to 0.5. Okay, and you'll see here that you have nice rounded edge here. It's added a single segment, which you could increase if you want to make it a little bit more rounded. Perhaps switch it to 2. Okay, you want to make sure that all these lines look nice and clean. All right, and there you have it. That's the basic methods of creating the seat cushion.